Topic 3. We're looking at explanatory and response variables and different types of bias we can see in data. So first, an explanatory variable is the variable whose effect you study, also called an independent variable, the X variable. And then the response variable, outcomes you report. Sometimes when we're looking at data, it's quite clear what the explanatory variable and the response variable is. Sometimes it's actually a little bit cloudy. Sometimes there is no explanatory and response variable, even if we're recording two things. So let's say I recorded two quantitative variables. Number of hours studied and your score on your statistics test. We have an explanatory and a response variable. What's the explanatory? Number of hours studied, right? And the response variable, your score on the test. We'd hope that we would see a positive relationship. As our study goes up, your score on the test goes up. Right? Would this necessarily be a perfectly linear relationship if I recorded those two variables from everyone in the class? No, right? Why? There's variability everywhere. And we discussed that idea of variability. How when we're measuring the same things from different observational units, responses will vary. What about your score on the English portion of the SAT and the score on the math portion of the SAT? In investigating those, there is a strong linear relationship, right? Where people that score well on the math portion tend to score good on the English portion, and vice versa. Particularly good students are good students in all courses. But is there an explanatory and response variable with those two?
Yeah.
As much as I'd love to say that your math skills explain how good you are in English, I think that would be a stretch, right? So your score on the math portion wouldn't necessarily be useful in predicting your score on the English portion, and vice versa, right? One doesn't cause the other. Okay? Is there a cause and effect relationship? We're going to look at the idea of establishing causation, and we're going to find it's actually quite difficult to do with observational studies, right? When we're just gathering data from something like an SAT test. We can establish causation when we're doing a designed experiment. And that's why in that scientific area, right, designing experiments is so useful, because we can establish a cause and effect relationship between an explanatory and a response data. All right. This section, we're going to look at different forms of bias. One of our goals in statistics is to identify possible sources of bias and make sure we eliminate them as much as we can. First type of bias, sampling bias. We systematically favoring certain outcomes. Am I sampling in a way, right, where my sample doesn't really represent the whole population? My goal is to have that sample represent everyone in my population, and hopefully we don't leave out a certain segment. If I wanted to find out the opinion of the quality of the food in the cafeteria, so I put out a survey of all social studies classes. Is my population representative of everyone? No. You don't take social studies as a freshman, right? Therefore, that entire group of our school would be left out of our school, right? So we're systematically favoring the opinions of sophomores through juniors. Goodbye. A confounding variable, a long one, a variable in which it is not clear that the effect on the response variable can be attributed only to the explanatory variable. Look at several silly examples of this, right? But we've already looked at the one in my very first day a week ago, right? When we looked at the on-time percentage of flights for America West versus Alaska Airlines. We had the confounding variable as the location of departure. There was another study. It turns out that the more firefighters that are at a fire, the more damage that is caused by the fire. Right? So we have, is there a cause and effect between more firefighters and more damage? Or is there another variable in there that could explain that damage piece? Bigger fire, right? A bigger fire is going to cause more firefighters to go, and it's going to cause more damage. So though there is a pretty strong link between the number of firefighters in the fire and the damage caused, there's not necessarily that cause and effect, that confounding variable. The effects of the size of the fire. And there's also strong evidence that if you're looking at reading levels of kids between 2nd and 5th grade, the larger their shoe size, the better they are at reading. So do kids with big feet tend to read better? Yes. No, right? What's the confounding variable in that situation? Their age, right? Age. The older they are, the bigger their feet, and also their reading level. So we need to control for those confounding variables and keep those in mind. But there's often many other things that affect those. In an observational study, we don't necessarily have control of those confounding variables. But in an experimental region, we do. So an observational study is there's no treatment applied. I'll explain that idea of what a treatment is in just a second. The researcher just records data. It's a little bit ambiguous in the definition because when we do an experiment, we're recording data too. So, examples of observational studies. When I ask all of you, how many SAGE you did? Observational study. I'm just recording data, gathering the data. Right? Whether or not you want to abolish tenure, also an observational study. We can do retrospective observational studies, where I look at and gather data from the past. So I want to see your math grade your freshman year and record all of those in the past. I can do prospective studies where I gather data as I go, right? We're moving into the future. Right? And sometimes we just gather data at the time being. I'll measure on the height of all of you. Also an observational study. An experiment is different, right? An experiment, we apply a treatment to each of our groups. So with an observational study, we're going to want to get a sample of our population that's representative of the entire population. Okay? With an experiment, we have to rely on volunteers. Right? If you're testing a new drug, right? And you've seen those drug commercials where this does this, everyone's smiling, but your arm might fall off in the fine print, right? All those bad things that can happen to you, right? in order to do those, you can't just say, I'm going to take a random sample from my population. You have to be in the study. You're going to have to go away from your family for a while and all this. So experiments rely on volunteers. And since it is volunteers, are volunteers that will are those volunteers representative of everyone? No. So what we do in an experiment, right, is we try to separate them into two groups that are as alike as possible in every single way, except for one way, and that's the treatment. We're going to apply a treatment to one group. The other group does not get the treatment. We compare what happens at the end. Okay? In topic 5, we're going to get into much more depth. So the next topic, topic 4, we'll get into observational studies, how to truly get a sample that's representative of our population. And then topic 5, we're going to get into all the details of how to carefully design a controlled experiment. Different ways, types of sampling techniques that may produce bias. Some of these almost always produce bias, but it's important to know that not all the time. Once you jot these down, I'll give you a short description and example for each of these. All these bias. And then these can be good sampling techniques if done properly, but there's still a chance for bias in here. So first, our voluntary response bias. This is when you don't choose randomly who participates, right? But you give the people a chance to volunteer your survey. These are these call-in surveys or the surveys you see online, right? It turns out that the people that respond to these types of surveys tend to have very strong opinions about the subject. Like if you're the type of person like, I don't really care, are you going to go out of your way to fill out an online survey or call in that show? No, right? You typically have strong opinions, and they're typically negative opinions about whatever subject matter is being approached, right? So over many of these types of surveys, they found that there's a consistency to overestimate a negative response from voluntary response. And then convenient surveys. You could get lucky, right? And go ahead and get a good sample. But it's not often the case, right? So if I stand out my door, right, and I want to gather a random sample of, or a sample of 20 kids, not a random sample, right? And second period, I'm asking, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like math? And I have Mr. Rounds teaching AP calculus over there, I'm teaching AP statistics here. I think that sample would have some bias. Right? So convenient samples tend to create bias. Or say I want to figure out how many hours people work per week. So I go to the local mall on a Wednesday at like say 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Find out people that are in the mall hanging out during the week. A lot of them are retired, maybe don't have jobs, right? So it's an underestimate. Though it's convenient, I can just walk out and gather all the information. It doesn't necessarily give me a clear picture. Stratified samples. Stratified samples are excellent sampling techniques when done well. So the best part about a stratified sample is this. Let's look at our high school in general. I want to figure out the opinion of our high school as a whole about how much they appreciate Mr. Angelo wearing a tie on Mondays. I know that at our school, right, we have 325 freshmen, right? So they have a higher higher proportion of freshmen than seniors. I think there's 250 seniors, right? About the same for juniors. So what I can do is, if I want to draw a sample of, say, 50 students, I can proportionally gather the right number of freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors to make sure that they are representative in my sample in the same amounts that they're representative in our population. Okay. Oftentimes, we want to make sure we have an equal proportion of males and females in our sample. So this is two different ways to stratify. Stratify by gender, stratify by class. Let's say if I want to do our whole district, I can stratify by school. Right? Oak Ridge, Ponderosa, Union Mine, us, Lee Valley Independence, Robinson. So, and then systematic sampling. Systematic sampling is an excellent way to do a sample if I do not have what's called a sampling frame. Sampling frame is a list of every single observational unit in our population. Is that hard to get sometimes? Right? Say I want to get a good idea of the proportion of trailers driving down through Placerville on Sunday, right? Do I have a list of every possible car that's driving down? No, right? But I could sit there for, say, a half hour and then pick every 10 car. Count those. That represents my sample, right? Key is we need to randomly select the places. So let's go ahead and get into our bookwork and see some of the examples our book gives.